Guys, there's not new people coming to crypto. We had the peak of users in crypto at the top of the market. Goes down after that. Chris, what's going on?
There we go. Get the volume going here. What's going on, man?
Not much, man. Trying to make it happen. You have came very highly recommended on our list of TA experts, and we've never met before. Hello, my name is Ben. Welcome to the show. I guess what are your overall? Well, let's do this first. Tell everybody who you are and kind of what you do.
All right. My name's Christopher Inks. I run a company called Texas West Capital. And we do market forecasting and trader education. And I just, that's my thing. I'm just one of those guys that as a teenager knew I didn't want to work for anybody, had to figure out how to do that. And so it was trading and entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
I just couldn't, I don't know, man, that idea of working for somebody and, having to respect them because they're above you, even though they're an idiot, just never worked for me. Yeah.
Well, just don't tell the people that work for me that. Thanks. I need them. I need all of them. Okay. So in all seriousness though, so let's go into it. Like, you're a charts guy. Like, what are you seeing with the markets, and what should people be expecting? I mean, there's a big famous question now. Like, what are we going to see first, 25K or 35K? Love to get your thoughts on that too.
Yeah. All right. You want to pull up a chart here?
Sure.
Let me see if I can first time I've used this software here. Give me just 1 second.
Yeah, I was using some buggy software myself a minute ago, apparently. Called the internet.
Let me see here. I think that's what I'm looking for right there. All right. You can see that all right?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, great. Yeah. So this is basically my idea. I was talking back in June of last year when we had that third capitulation, that was the start of accumulation. And then, of course, the bread and butter of what I do is actually price action and volume relationships through Wyckoff. And so that's a big understanding of accumulation and distribution and how the big players actually move in the markets. And so what you get, a lot of people look at this, they say, well, accumulation was down here at that November low. Actually, it started back here in June. This November low is what we call a terminal shakeout. And then everybody's freaking out on this pullback over the last few months. And that's what we just, terminology is a back up the edge of the creek. You see the decreasing volume, the overlapping price action. And then, of course, we kind of cleared that 7 days. We cleared that 2 months of decline. So, when you look at it this way, as far as I'm concerned, the bottom's been in. We've rallied for 7 months, over 100%. I just, pretty much any metric you look at, whether you're moving averages or market structure or anything, it all says that the bottom's in. And so, of course, Bitcoin's bottom's in, rising tide lifts all ships, and pretty much all alts for the most part should rally with it. There's always some stragglers out there that don't necessarily follow through, but I think that's what we do. And I've got this movement here. A lot of people don't like this. I've been talking about this since way down here. About February, March, this upper 40s, lower 50s kind of target to get us 5 waves up here. So that's kind of what I'm looking at the moment.
So if that's getting us 5 waves, right now we're on the second wave still? Which way are we on?
Okay, so what we've got here is we've actually got, what we've got is this 1, 2, 1, 2. So this right here is wave 3 of the larger wave 3. Yeah. So this is what you should expect is some harder, faster, stronger movement through here, kind of like similar to this third wave right here, or this third wave right here, coming up through this. And that makes sense because you got a lot of open room over here until you're kind of getting up into that 40s area. Yeah. So, these are smaller interior accounts here, but looking at that 3 of 3 up here at around 43.4, and then 3 up there around 47.580. Now, real quick here, there's always a chance this could be a leading diagonal. So this could actually be a 1, 2, 3, 4, and finishing a 5 here, in which case we'll get a rejection and we'll pull back here to about 25,000 again. But until that happens, we kind of default to the idea of a 1-2, 1-2.
Yeah. And you're definitely of the opinion, I would assume, that the overall bottom for this market has been in for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was talking about it back around that June low
Yeah.
being the beginning of accumulation. And then we had this, I talked about this terminal checkout. This was the FTX stuff, man.
Yep,
This was
absolutely.
huge.
Yeah.
And all we got was
guys.
this small little drop here. A lot of volume coming in, a lot of catching of that volume, creates that small rate, and then just heads on out. And so looks good overall, really.
Yeah. I was very confident when in November when we hit that dip that was it. So because we've been looking for November to be the bottom the entire year, and interesting the way that the news seems to line up with what you're already seeing from the technicals a lot of the time. So, what about anything else? Do you have any other charts that you brought to show us today?
Yeah. Let me jump over here real quick. I've got let's see here. I've got a few here that I've kind of caught. I mean, all these alts, guys, I'm gonna be honest with you. Almost all these alts are just kind of bottomed out and really gonna, head up. And so I've got ETC USDT here, Ethereum Classic, the original Ethereum. And, again, we've got another great accumulation structure here. You can see that volume drops off real nice as we're kind of going through this. You get this kind of low down, this major area of support here, this red line, the support resistance flip right here. Prints a higher low, we're off. I mean, I think this thing, continues and breaks out, So I'm looking for impulsive breakout above the, this is the weekly time frame. So the weekly pivoted around $26, $27. That should easily run us into the top of the range here at 46. We break out through that. We should at least be running up here probably to about 145 or so. And then, of course, if the market's running, we should see new all-time highs with that.
Yeah. Well, super excited. Now, what about time range for you? What do you generally think about time range?
I don't tend to worry a whole lot about time because time is a really difficult thing to get correctly because anything can happen. Corrections can take longer forms. But if I'm looking at this, my general idea is that Bitcoin rallies potentially up to that 50,000 target by the end of the year. It pulls back for about 3-4 months or whatever into the halving next year. And then from that, we get the new all-time high coming out on that wave 3 there, so what is that, 2024. Yeah. And so, I think alts just kind of follow along with it more or less.
Yeah. Well, I definitely believe that, that we will see another big altcoin season this next bull run for sure. I think I think FTX cut it short last time with a lot of the shorting that they were doing. Now the question is, will somebody just replace them? Be somebody else? I don't know. But I think the really interesting thing here to look at for me is going to be what happens around New Year's this year. Because if you go back to the last cycle and you look at what was going on, well, in March of 2020, we got the pandemic crash wick, right? Which was on March 12th, which took all the momentum from Bitcoin that was actually moving up positively at the time until February when people started whispering about this COVID thing, right? So the really interesting thing to me will be, will we have something similar in Q4 this year, or maybe January of next year, which could cause like a black swan, which could cause the price to drop dramatically? Because if not, are we going to see Bitcoin kind of go through this cycle the way it did before, in the cycles before, or will we get another one that's kind of like a double bottom? And I don't know. It's very interesting to watch because, we do have that CME gap sitting there at 20,300.
Yeah. But that particular CME gap is what we call a breakaway gap. And, there's like 4 types of gaps. And
this is interesting. I didn't know this. Teach me something. I've never heard this before. This is good.
Yeah. So you've got 4 different types of gaps. You got your breakaway gaps, and you have just regular gaps that occur because of weekends, when it's closed and everything, stuff like that. But your breakaway gap is usually it's a reversal change. It's going through resistance, and often it's not actually filled in. Now, whether it does or not, we'll see what happens. But I don't see, what happened in 2020 there. It had the whole BitMEX. I think it was driven by that BitMEX liquidation engine kept going. They had to finally turn it off there. Yeah. And that's one of those things that's more that's not what we usually get. That's the thing that kind of happens, every once in a while, like you said, kind of like a black swan kind of thing. Yeah. And so I wouldn't expect that we would have that same kind of movement coming up again. I would expect it to be more like it normally is. My big thing is that on Bitcoin, for instance, we are above that weekly pivot now, and we've pulled back and tested as support. And so another big thing of what I do is pivots. And usually what happens is if you get that strong push, impulsive breakout above just the pivot itself, and you pull back and you retest it as support successfully, then usually that's it. It just continues going up. It runs through the pivots all the way up through the R4, R5 pivot. And so that's what I'm looking at on the weekly. Yeah. And so if that's the case, then the idea that it hits the 21,000, you can't guarantee that anything's going to happen. It's trading. There are no guarantees in trading other than you're going to lose money at some point, right? Yeah. But the odds are likely that now that we've kind of done this with the pivot here, that we kind of stay above it. And as long as that happens, as long as that pivot's there, I don't see a reason why we pop down to 21 really.
I tend to agree with you. I think the longer we sit away from that, when we went down into, I can't remember if we went slightly into the 23s or right about to 24, wherever it was, we bottomed recently. To me, that was the last hurrah. Like if we weren't able to plunge through and get down and lick that $20,300 level, we probably weren't going to be able to. So I tend to agree with you. This is going to be another one. Like I think there's still one at $9,000. I think somewhere around that, and that's a similar one. It got it came up and then it came pretty close to filling that thing and then it broke away back in 2020. So could be something similar that we're looking at. So, well, Texas West Capital. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. Been really phenomenal. Definitely want to get you back on the show. That was good stuff.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay. We got his link in the live chat and in the description. See you, Chris. Bye.